The convoy stretched across the barren valley like a line drawn through dust, its armored trucks rumbling forward with a steady, mechanical patience. The sun hung low behind a veil of pale haze, casting a dull, yellow light over the landscape. Heat shimmered above the ground, blurring the horizon into something unreal, as if the desert itself were watching. Inside the vehicles, soldiers sat in tense silence. Their gear clinked softly with the movement of the trucks, rifles resting across their laps, fingers never too far from the triggers. No one spoke unless necessary. They had been briefed. This route was known, not just for its isolation, but for the way it invited trouble. Up ahead, the terrain narrowed. The wide, open desert gave way to a canyon carved by time and wind, its walls rising steep and jagged on either side. Shadows pooled between the rocks, swallowing light and offering perfect cover for anything, or anyone, waiting. From above, hidden in those shadows, the bandits watched. Rafik lay flat against the stone, his body pressed into the dust as he peered through a pair of worn binoculars. Below, the convoy crawled forward, unaware, or so it seemed. He tracked each vehicle carefully, counting under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 8 vehicles, he murmured. A man beside him adjusted his rifle, glancing down with a greedy smile. Not many guards. Not enough, another whispered. Rafik lowered the binoculars slowly. His lips curled into something between a grin and a snarl. He had seen this pattern before. Military convoys, stretched thin, overconfident. Supplies moving from one base to another. Easy targets dressed in steel. He turned his head slightly, signaling to the others scattered along the ridge. Scarves covered their faces, leaving only eyes visible, sharp, restless, eager. No mistakes, Rafik said quietly. We hit fast. Take out the front and rear. Trap them in the middle. A ripple of nods followed. Below, the convoy rolled into the canyon, the sound of engines echoing off the rock walls. The space tightened around them, turning movement into a funnel. Dust kicked up by the tires lingered in the still air, hanging like a curtain. Inside the central vehicle, General Amina Rahman sat unmoving. The interior was dim, lit by the faint glow of digital displays mounted along the walls. A map flickered softly in front of her, tracking their route with quiet precision. Around her, officers shifted uneasily, the tension creeping into their movements despite their training. A young lieutenant leaned forward slightly, glancing toward the reinforced door as the canyon walls closed in. Ma'am, he said cautiously, this stretch, it's known for ambushes, Amina finished calmly. The lieutenant hesitated. Yes, ma'am. She didn't look at him. Her eyes remained on the map, though her attention seemed elsewhere entirely. And what does that tell you? He blinked, unsure. That we should proceed with caution. Amina's lips curved faintly, though there was no warmth in it. It tells you that if you were the enemy, this is exactly where you would strike. Before he could respond, the world outside exploded. Gunfire shattered the air without warning, a violent eruption that echoed through the canyon like thunder. Bullets slammed into the lead vehicle, metal ringing under the impact. Tires burst with sharp cracks. Glass sprayed outward in glittering fragments. Ambush! Someone shouted over the comms. The convoy lurched to a halt as the front truck swerved sideways, blocking the path. Almost simultaneously, another explosion rocked the rear vehicle, sealing them in. Inside the trucks, soldiers snapped into motion. Doors flew open. Boots hit the ground. Weapons came alive with deafening bursts of return fire. From above, the bandits unleashed everything they had. Muzzle flashes flickered along the ridges like a line of fireflies, each one followed by a deadly stream of bullets raining down. The advantage was clear, they had height, cover, and surprise. At least, that's what they believed. Inside the central vehicle, the lieutenant braced himself against the wall as the truck rattled under the impact. Ma'am, we're surrounded. Amina finally stood. The movement was slow, deliberate, as if the chaos outside had no authority over her. She stepped closer to the display, her gaze sharpening as data began to populate the screen, trajectory estimates, heat signatures, incoming fire patterns. Her mind moved faster than the battle. Multiple firing points, she said quietly. Left ridge, higher density. Right ridge, scattered. Rear flank, less organized. Another burst of gunfire struck the vehicle, louder this time. The lieutenant flinched. They've got us pinned, he insisted. Amina reached up and tapped a control on her headset. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady and clear, cutting through the noise like a blade. All units, she said, execute formation Delta. For a fraction of a second, nothing seemed to change. Then everything did. Outside, the convoy shifted with sudden, precise coordination. What had appeared to be ordinary transport vehicles began to transform. Panels along their sides slid open with mechanical precision, revealing mounted weapons that locked into position with a heavy click. Soldiers moved not in panic, but in pattern. From the tops of the vehicles, compact drones launched upward, their rotors slicing through the dusty air as they climbed rapidly toward the ridges. The bandits hesitated. Rafiq's grin faded as he watched the movement below. "What are they doing?" he muttered. Before anyone could answer, one of the drones streaked toward a cluster of fighters on the left ridge. The explosion was sudden and devastating. Rock shattered outward. Dust and debris filled the air. 2 men were thrown from their positions, their weapons tumbling into the canyon below. "Drones!" someone screamed. Panic rippled through the bandits' lines. Another strike followed. Then another. The convoy below unleashed a coordinated barrage, targeting positions with terrifying accuracy. It wasn't blind return fire, it was calculated, precise, as if every shot had already been planned. Rafiq ducked as bullets tore into the rock above his head, fragments raining down around him. His heart pounded, not with excitement now, but with something colder. This wasn't right. "These aren't just transports," one of his men said, his voice shaking. Below, General Amina stepped out of the vehicle. The canyon roared with gunfire, explosions echoing off the walls, and yet she walked forward into it as if stepping into silence. Dust swirled around her boots. Bullets cracked through the air, striking metal, stone, anything but her. "Advance," she ordered calmly. Her soldiers moved with her, pushing outward from the convoy in disciplined lines. Covering fire suppressed the remaining bandits while drones circled above, marking targets, guiding every movement. The balance had shifted completely. On the ridge, Rafiq dared to look again. What he saw made his stomach drop. This wasn't an ambush. It was a trap. And they were the ones caught inside it. The canyon no longer roared. Where minutes ago there had been chaos, gunfire tearing through the air, explosions shaking the ground, there was now a heavy, suffocating quiet. Smoke drifted lazily upward from shattered rock and burning debris, softening the jagged edges of the battlefield. The scent of dust and metal hung thick, clinging to the throat with every breath. Rafiq lay on his side behind a broken slab of stone, his chest rising unevenly. Blood trickled from a cut along his temple, slipping past his eyebrow and into his eye, blurring his vision with a dull red haze. He didn't wipe it away. He barely moved at all. Around him, the remnants of his men were scattered, some groaning, some silent, all disarmed. Rifles lay discarded across the rocks, useless now. A few of the bandits had tried to crawl away in the final moments, only to find soldiers already there, weapons trained, voices sharp and controlled. There had been no escape. Bootsteps crunched steadily over gravel, deliberate and unhurried. Rafiq heard them before he saw her. He forced himself to roll slightly, wincing as pain shot through his ribs. His fingers brushed against the empty ground where his rifle had once been. Gone. Everything was gone. When he looked up, she was standing there. General Amina Rahman. She wasn't surrounded by chaos anymore. The battlefield seemed to part around her, as if even the aftermath knew to keep its distance. Her uniform was still immaculate despite the dust, her posture straight, her expression calm, too calm for someone who had just dismantled an entire ambush in minutes. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Rafiq stared at her, searching for something, anger, triumph, cruelty, but finding none of it. Just control. You, his voice cracked, dry and uneven. He swallowed before trying again. You led this. Amina regarded him with a steady gaze, her eyes sharp but unreadable. Yes. The simplicity of the answer struck him harder than he expected. No boasting. No explanation. Just truth. He let out a short, bitter laugh that turned into a cough. We thought, he trailed off, shaking his head weakly. We thought you were just another convoy. Amina took a few steps closer, her boots pressing softly into the dust. She stopped just within reach, though there was no threat in her stance. She didn't need one. You've attacked others before, she said, not as a question. Rafiq's jaw tightened. He didn't answer, but the silence said enough. And they responded the way you expected, she continued. Confusion, panic, disorganization. His eyes flickered, the memory of past raids surfacing, easy victories, terrified soldiers, quick retreats. It had built his confidence, fed it until it became certainty. Amina tilted her head slightly, studying him. That's the problem with patterns, she said. People start believing their rules. Rafiq exhaled slowly, his breath unsteady. You set this up. It wasn't accusation anymore. It was realization. We prepared, Amina corrected. There's a difference. Behind her, soldiers moved through the canyon with quiet efficiency. They secured weapons, checked the wounded, and restrained those who could still fight. No shouting. No unnecessary movement. Everything was controlled, measured. Even victory was disciplined. Rafik shifted slightly, trying to push himself up, but pain forced him back down. He clenched his teeth, frustration flickering across his face. You knew someone would come, he said. You wanted this. Amina didn't answer immediately. Her gaze drifted briefly toward the ridges above, the same ridges that had once hidden his men. Now they were nothing more than broken silhouettes against the sky. We knew this route was vulnerable, she said at last. We knew someone like you would see an opportunity. Her eyes returned to him, steady and unwavering. What we didn't know was who. The weight of those words settled over him like the dust in the air. He had not been chosen specifically. He had simply been the one foolish enough to step forward. Rafik let out a slow breath, something close to a laugh but without any humor. So we were just convenient. Amina didn't soften. You were predictable. The word stung. He had built his reputation on being feared, on being clever, on staying one step ahead. And yet here he was, lying in the dirt, disarmed, surrounded, because he had done exactly what she expected. For the first time, doubt crept fully into his expression. You turned us into bait, he said quietly, almost to himself. Amina's voice was calm, but firm. No, you turned yourselves into targets. Silence stretched between them again. In the distance, one of the drones hovered lower, its faint hum blending with the whisper of wind through the canyon. A soldier signaled to another, and a group moved off toward the far end, sweeping the last of the area. Everything was nearly over. Rafik looked up at her, really looking now. Not as an enemy to defeat, but as something else entirely. Something he hadn't accounted for. Who are you? He asked. It wasn't just curiosity. It was the need to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Amina held his gaze for a moment, then straightened slightly. I'm someone who doesn't rely on luck, she said. There was no arrogance in it. Just certainty. She turned her head slightly. Take him. Two soldiers stepped forward immediately, their movements precise. They grabbed Rafik by the arms and pulled him to his feet. Pain flared through his body, but he didn't resist. There was no point. As they began to lead him away, his gaze drifted back over the canyon. The ridges where his men had once stood were scarred and blackened. Smoke still curled from the impact points where the drones had struck. The ground below was marked with the aftermath of a fight that had ended almost before it began. It didn't feel real. We've done this for years, he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. No one ever hit back like this. One of the soldiers tightened his grip slightly, but said nothing. Rafik shook his head slowly, the last fragments of his certainty crumbling away. We thought we were the danger. Ahead of him, General Amina was already walking back toward the convoy, her attention shifting forward, to what came next. The battle was finished. There was no reason to look back. Rafik watched her go, something hollow settling in his chest. We didn't even know what we were walking into, he said. This time, there was no answer. The convoy began to move again soon after. Engines roared back to life, cutting through the silence as vehicles repositioned and rolled forward, leaving the canyon behind piece by piece. Order restored. Mission continuing. As Rafik was loaded into one of the secured transports, he took one last look at the place where everything had fallen apart. The narrow pass, the high ridges, the perfect ambush point, it was all still there. Unchanged. And yet, for him, it would never look the same again. Because now he understood. The danger had never been the road. It had been the one leading the convoy through it.